Hey guys, it's the bloke with the beard here, off for another video. I put a post up the other day on my Facebook page, and asking what should I cover. I had no ideas and had some really great thoughts come up, and I'm going to use that as a list going forward. I think some great ideas. But I started writing a video based on one of the ideas, and very quickly I realized that I wasn't talking about that topic. I was talking about forgiveness. And I thought that's what I would talk about today. Forgiveness is something that's really hard to do. And in our modern society, we get told we don't need to do that. I've sat in with other mental health professionals, talking to clients, and heard them say, "Oh, no, don't worry about that. Just cut them off, move on with life." I don't see the benefit in that. I don't see how that works. Especially when we're cutting off family members for what could be small things. So I think one of the things we need to look at first is, well, what is forgiveness? According to the Cambridge Dictionary, it's to stop blaming or be angry with someone for something that person has done, or not punish them for something. And that's really hard. You know, I've been in the position where I've held on to a grudge, where I've held on to something. I've thought I could cut someone off. And you just live with this thing inside your heart. And I know how hard it is. And there's two ways of forgiveness. One is the easier way, when someone has come up to you to apologize, said, "Look, what I did was wrong and I'm really sorry." That does make forgiveness easier. Doesn't always make it easy, but it makes it easier. And then the other form of forgiveness is where you just have to forgive them. They're not going to repent. They're not going to change their ways. They're not going to acknowledge or show remorse for what they've done. They've still hurt you, but they don't show that remorse. And part of today, we're going to talk about dealing with that, and just forgiveness as a whole. So we talk about forgiveness. When someone betrays us, when someone lets us down, when someone does something that hurts us, we start going into that territory of hate. Again, Cambridge Dictionary, to dislike someone or something very much. Now, you can find all sorts of definitions, but I really love this one, simply because it addresses the fact that hate is a strong dislike. And so it becomes very easy to hate something. And the longer we hold on to a grudge, the more we just try and just remove ourselves from what happened, the more that dislike grows in us. And it becomes something that is a part of our lives, and we never truly move on. So why is forgiveness important? According to Hunter and Wortham in 2026, so that's this year, forgiveness of specific perpetrators was associated with better outcomes across studies, though survivors with severe abuse histories typically reported greater difficulty with forgiving. That's a lot of words. To break it down, your mental health, your physical health, your academic life, your work life becomes better when you are able to forgive. We have a better life. And it's almost like, in spite of what has happened, we are better people because we have forgiven. And the reason I kept the second part of that quote from the study is because the bigger the hurt, the harder the forgiveness, the harder it is. And we don't want to back away from that. We all know that big things hurt lots. And forgiveness isn't something that just takes place. Forgiveness isn't something that just happens. It can take time. It can take, little things might take a few minutes, a few hours. Bigger things, weeks, months, even years, it can take to learn how to forgive something and someone. Forgiveness is a spectrum, and we're all on different parts of that spectrum. But if we want better mental health, we want better physical health, studies show forgiveness is the way. McCulloch in 2001 says that people who are inclined to forgive their transgressions tend to be more agreeable and more emotionally stable. That pretty much says it all. The more we forgive, the more stable we are as people. I've met so many clients who have held on to these grudges, and their whole lives are... Everyone around them is walking on tippy toes because they don't know how to react and respond to this person, because this little seed of hate has grown and they just take it out everywhere. They don't have trust in people. They don't have the ability to get along and respond well to people because that thing of hurt is inside. The problem with doing this during summer and in a house is that I don't get to have the fans on because they pick up on the microphone. So if you see me taking sweat, that's why. What about the opposite side then? What happens when we hate? According to Dennis and the Destructive Power of Hate that came out earlier this year, it distorts perception, removes ambiguity, that's a hard word for me, and prevents the possibility of alternative interpretations. At the same time, hate reshapes the hater by binding their agency to a reactive trajectory, diminishing their own freedom and generativity. Again, there's a lot of words there, but it prevents healing. When we break an arm, we go see a doctor, and they'll do whatever it is they do, and they set it in place so it heals. And when we get hurt, something breaks. And forgiveness is the act of setting it in place, putting a cast or whatever it is on there, so that part of our psyche can heal. And when we can't heal, that gets worse. And it shapes us because we bind to that, because we're just drawn to that moment in our life. We're drawn to that hurt. We're drawn to that sorrow. And like I said before, we live in this age where people are told, just cut them off. And working with a lot of young people and so on, you see they just cut everyone off that hurts them. And they end up with no one left in their lives. You don't have anyone to talk to, anyone to spend time with, anyone to share your hobbies with, because someone hurt you just that little bit, so they cut them off. There's no forgiveness anymore. How are we supposed to bond as humans when every transgression leaves us wanting to cut people off, when every transgression we allow to cause hurt? When we don't choose forgiveness, we choose that hate. We choose to hold on to it. Hold on to that grudge. And again, the destructive power of hate. Hate is destructive not because of its intensity, but because of the structural distortions it creates. Even just little bits of hate causes the way our brains operate to change. Every time we decide to cut someone off or just move on, we create that change in the structural integrity of our brain. That's why we spend so much time talking about forgiveness. Now, hate isn't just something that we do to others. The amount of times I hear young people talk about their parents and say, I hate my parents, hate my teachers, I hate this person who used to be my friend because they did this. Hate can be directed towards yourself. As someone who has experienced a great deal of self-hatred, this is something I've really struggled with. Goldblatt tells us that suicide takes place in the context of unbearable hostility towards the self. Now, that could be just outright hatred of who you are and what you've become. But that hostility, that hate, could be worthlessness. In the video of suicide, I discussed the situation where the person's found themselves out of a job. Their wife nags them. They can't afford money for school. And all these things have happened at once. So there's a level of self-hatred there because they can't have the value and worth. They can't provide the way that's needed. Self-hatred is a very strong thing. That's very hard to forgive. So, when we talk about hatred, we move to forgiveness, okay? Wu, Broom, and all them in 2026 says that forgiveness helps us to change the negative memories, including a psychological level, as seen on neuroimaging during their studies. Basically, when we learn to forgive, our brain gets healthier. Even the hurt, the level of hurt we have for those memories decreases. So not only are we improving our psyche, but we're improving our memory, a quality of the memory. We're improving how we see it. It's probably always going to be a negative memory. It's a memory that brings us hurt. But forgiveness can help reduce the hurt we feel when we come back to that memory. So, what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is a suite of pro-social motivational changes that occurs after a person has incurred a transgression. Our psychologists and mental health friends love their big words. They really do. Forgiveness is a suite of pro-social motivational changes. Basically, it's a series of thought processes in your brain that aim towards improving your social and mental health. It could be towards improving your relationship with that person, with the world around you. But it happens after someone has hurt you. And like I said before, that could be they've come to you and apologized, which always makes things easier. It always does. But not always can we have that person come and show remorse. Sometimes we have to forgive just because we can, because we want a better life. When we want a better life, we have to forgive. That's what all this research is saying. That's why when we put these things on screen, I show those references in the bottom there, because it's important that you can look these up yourself. If all the videos I've shown so far, I've shown where I've got the information from. That's so you can go look it up if you want more. The value of forgiveness lies in the fact that it essentially requires a recognition of the wrongdoer's responsibility for his action. We are recognizing the wrongdoer's actions, but it's easier when they take responsibility too. And we need to acknowledge that hurt. Shortly, we're going to talk about how to forgive, but we also want to remember that this is something we do whether they apologize or not, because we want the best life we can have. And for a lot of people, when we're talking about our own self, forgiveness of who we are and the things that we have done, and it might be that we haven't been able to provide. It might be that we don't see the value we bring to the world. We still need to forgive ourselves. So when we talk about how to forgive, you might have someone in mind that's really hurt you. It could be a friend who's done the wrong thing by you. It could be yourself. It could be a family member. It could be your boss. It doesn't matter who. Think about what forgiveness would look like in these situations. So the first step in forgiveness is to acknowledge what happened. And Healy here emphasizes acknowledge, because it's acknowledge. Acknowledge what happened. You'll see I've left out a comma because there's supposed to be one. But acknowledge what happened. When we acknowledge the event, it makes it easier for us to move on. You know, the cliche thing about drugs and alcohol and addiction, the first step is to recognize you have a problem. You can't work on self-improvement if you don't know the problem. So we need to ask, what is the forgiveness that you're seeking? What is the event that happened? What are we looking for? The second step is to experience your feelings. Now, for a lot of blokes, this is going to be challenging. We as blokes experience 3 types of emotions: mad, glad, and sad. They're the main ones. And as we get older, we might grow and explore some more. But especially us blokes who live out bush, we're not taught about emotions. So learning to experience our feelings can be really hard. We might not be able to name our feelings. We might not be able to name what exactly it is, but we can experience them. By experiencing our emotions, we can show to ourselves the level of hurt. We can show to ourselves what's actually happening in here. Up here, we can share what's happening to ourselves. That's really important, because if we don't understand how we've been hurt, what the damage is, you can't move forward. When a truck hits a bridge because they didn't pay attention to the maximum height sign, they don't just let the cars back over. They send in the engineers, and they send in all the blokes who know about bridges and structural engineering, and they figure out how much damage the bridge has had. They've figured out what they need to do to fix the bridge. They don't just send you back out. It's the same with forgiveness. When we experience our feelings, we are sending out the engineers to see what the damage is, to see what needs to be done to fix the bridge. Now, we then have the next hardest thing for most of us blokes. And you'll notice that I include myself in this, because I still have to do this. This is still something I struggle with. And I should know better, working in mental health, how to manage my emotions and how to deal with them and how to deal with forgiveness. I've still got everything I was brought up doing to manage and get past. So we've acknowledged the event had happened. We've sat there and gone, right, this is the damage, this is the feelings we have, that's the damage we need to fix. Now we've got to communicate. We actually got to say that we want to forgive. And this is really hard. And for me personally, this is the hardest part of the whole process. Because I'm hurt. Whatever the situation is, I've been hurt. I have suffered something because of the thing the other person's done. I have to live with that. And taking my mind from dwelling on the hurt to consciously deciding I want to forgive, that's a challenge for me. And that's where we sit, because we sit in the hurt. We sit in the pain. And it becomes routine. Our brain decides we want to live in that space. Even though it's hurting us and causing us more pain, our brain decides we want to live there. So it is the hardest part for me. It could be for you. It could be for you. The hardest part could be trying to figure out what the damage is that's been caused and sending the engineers up to the brain and figuring out where the feelings have been hurt. But for me, this is the hard part. Communicating, like even just to myself, that I want to forgive them. There's a part of my brain that goes, yeah, no, I have to. There's a part of my brain that goes, yeah, okay, we need to do this. Come on, let's go. But a big chunk of it just wants to sit in that pain. But that's why we experience our feelings, so we know what's going on. And when we've done that exploration of what the damage is, it's easier to see where the cracks are. It's easier to see where the weak points of our structures are. So we can address those as part of the we want to forgive aspect of life. This is one of the final parts, the forgive state. You don't want to carry the anger anymore. We don't want to carry the frustration. We don't want to carry the guilt. We don't want to carry the resentment. When we get to that point that we actually do want to forgive and we say, yeah, I want to forgive, this is the part where we start to let go of those feelings. This is the part where we start to, we acknowledge they exist. We're not hiding them away. We're not shunning them. We're just saying we need to let go. And this, again, this process can take a long time. I wouldn't expect most people to be able to do this like that. I don't expect that it would happen overnight. I don't believe that that's even possible. We let it go. And the final step is to release and give your anger to whatever you call a higher power. For me, that's giving it to God. For me, that's handing it over to Jesus. I'm a Christian, that's what I believe. For you, it might be Buddha, it might be Allah, it might be nature, the universe, anything, whatever it is that you find works for you. For me, like I said, it is Jesus. And I put a lot of time and prayer into handing that over, because I know that there have been many times I can't do it by myself. There have been a lot of times where I've been hurt and someone's done something that's hurt me and I couldn't let go. And as much as we talk about those being 5 steps, it's more of a fluid flowchart. It's not, they're 5 steps, 5 stages. But like all things relating to our mental health, relating to our psyche, we might go forwards and backs. We might sit there and release it, but then we realize we have to go back and explore our feelings and go back and look at the damage. We think we've done a good job, and then we realize it's still not quite working. So we go back and have a look and realize there's part of the bridge we forgot to patch. That's just how psyche goes. I've done a little bit of work in the drug and alcohol space. And you go forward, you go back, you go forward, and you go round, you skip some steps, and you go back right to the start and go right back to the end. It's all up to you and how you put it together. But I do like to discuss things from the Christian point of view. And this is something, in my experience, Christians can have struggles with too. We can be very hard on people who have hurt us. We can be really hard on things that have gone wrong, and we hold this grudge and we hold this hate. But if we were to be honest, when we sit there and go, oh, well, that's not a very Christian thing to do, we're to look at that. And, I have people in mind, or you probably have people in mind yourself. Just when you have people in mind, are you actually having people in mind? Are you being a little bit of a Pharisee and going, I'm not one of those. Thank goodness I'm not one of those. And you actually need to do this. But we all know people who go, oh no, that's not very Christ-like. I can't be associated with them. Oh no, look what they did. What does the Bible say? What does it say? In the book of Matthew in chapter 18, this is the English Standard Version here. It says, then Peter came up and said to him, so talking to Jesus, Lord, how often will my brother sin against me? And how often do I forgive him? Peter's got a point. We all, what's the limit? How often should we have to forgive someone who hurts us? What's the call here? And Jesus, Peter goes on and says, should I do it 7 times, Lord? 7 times should I do it? And Jesus said to him, I do not say unto you 7 times, but 77 times. Now, in case you're wondering, the maths on that is 490 times. And the concept here isn't that Jesus is expecting you to keep count. Jesus isn't saying keep count, so when you get to 491, you can smack him across the back of the head. That's Jesus is saying keep doing it. Never stop. From a Christian point of view, when you are saved by grace, you are constantly being forgiven for the things we do wrong. So, We don't take that for granted. We forgive. And that's what we do. But the question then comes, well, what do we do? Well, do we just let them keep hurting us? No. We change our situations. If we know that someone in a particular situation is going to keep hurting us, we strive to change the situation. We strive to change our relationship with the person so we don't keep getting hurt. We're not saying leave yourself in a position where you're going to get hurt. Part of that forgiveness is learning how to help that situation not happen again. So when we are working towards forgiveness, anyone can forgive. We all can. Sometimes it's harder than others. And if we've built a life around cutting people off and just holding grudges, forgiveness is insanely hard. It's rough. It can be done, though. But when we are taking that time to forgive, we take the time to make sure that we're not in that situation again. I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you for sticking with us this far. Our next video comes out next week, and if you want to hear more about forgiveness, if you want to learn how you might be able to do that for yourself to help improve your health, drop us a line. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. So drop us a line. Happy to chat, happy to help find a way to make your life better. Peace out, and we'll see you next time.